jauh. Ku kasih pasir putih di pantaimu senang, di mana lautan biru berkilatan terang. Ku kasih bunyi ombak memukul pantaimu. Nyanyian yang selalu senangkan hatiku. Ku kasih gunung-gunung besar mulialah, tanaman yang melayang keliling puncaknya. Ku kasih hutan selimut tanahku. Ku suka membara di bawah naunganmu. Ku kasih yang dengan membahayakan kejinan dan bekerja sungguh lagi aku rajin juga sampaikan maksudmu.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our participants. So that was Hai Tanaku Papua, my land Papua, or West Papua's national anthem. Welcome to the third and final episode of the West Papua webinar series during this Solidarity Month. I am Beverly Longid. I'm your moderator for today, and I'm with the International Indigenous Peoples Movement for Self-Determination and Liberation. So this webinar series was co-organized by the ILPS, International League of People's Struggles, Asia Pacific, the International Indigenous Peoples Movement for Self-Determination, and the Merdeka West Papua Global Support Network. In the first episode, we were introduced to West Papua's land and people and its history, starting from the period of Dutch colonization to the current period of Indonesian occupation, which already gave us a glimpse or a foundation of the people's struggle for self-determination. In the second episode, we unpacked what self-determination means as an inherent right of peoples and nations, and with reference to several international frameworks and how this rightly applies in the context of West Papua. Further, we also discussed how unity among the peoples of West Papua is very important and necessary, and how solidarity and support from the Indonesian people struggle actively plays a vital role in this. In today's episode, we'll be learning how exactly the people of West Papua are fighting for their self-determination and independence by getting to know the major organizations in the independence movement through which the people of West Papua come together to collectively assert their rights as a people and a sovereign nation. Indeed, it has been an eventful month for West Papua with the issue of the special autonomy and of course the people's strong rejection of it. The unabated killings and human rights violations continue, especially in the case of Induga, an area which has yet to recover from vicious military attack. Is from vicious military attack. It is precisely these situations that push people to fight back in various ways. And today, we get to know more about their struggle and how we at the international community can support it. So, but before we start, a few reminders. Um, Translations are available on Zoom. So just click Chinese to hear the Bahasa translation. Jika ingin mendengarkan terjemahan bahasa Indonesia, silakan menekan Chinese di tombol English. So this webinar series is also streaming live on the Facebook pages of ILPS Asia Pacific and the IPM SDL. For our participants, you can type in your comments and suggestions at the Q&A in Zoom, and in Facebook, you can type in at the comments box. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is Mr. Jacob Rumbiak. He is the spokesperson of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, or ULMWP, who shall be introducing to us the ULMP and the work that they do. Kaka Jacob, you have the mic.
Good afternoon to all our friends in International League of People's Struggle, including our Indonesian supporters. Thank you for organizing this informative webinar at this important stage in our campaign. Friends and supporters, first of all, West Papua has been illegally occupied and cruelly governed since the United Nations passed our non-self-governing territory to Indonesia on 1st of May, 1963. Today, I'm talking about our resistance and nation-making. So, in terms of the Montevideo Convention, 1933, West Papua is a divine territory. Its coordinates, based on astronomical position, have long been recognized in law and by our neighbors, Indonesia, Australia, and Papua New Guinea. West Papua's permanent population is related to the indigenous Melanesian in Papua New Guinea, Solomon Island, Fiji, Vanuatu, Torres Strait, Kanak in New Caledonia, and Maluku. The West Papuan independence movement has established government infrastructure and in this capacity has entered into relations with other states. What is the United Nations movement for West Papua? ULMWP is a 5-person executive which was elected in 2014 from our nation's 3 big political struggle organizations, namely the West Papua National Parliament, West Papua National Coalition for Liberation, and the Federal Republic of West Papua. ULMWP is accountable to each of those 3 bodies, which are in turn answerable to influential civilian and political powers, which you can see on the left of the screen. Forming the ULMWP was a necessary and courageous part of our struggle. We had to face the fact that the people's resistance was not succeeding because our leaders, our organization, and our agenda were not united. West Papua needed the support of region or regional governments, the international community, and the United Nations. Those were all ignoring the horrendous crimes committed by the Indonesian state and not even considering the West Papuan inalienable right to self-determination and independence. Friends and supporters, in 2013, a massive grassroots campaign across Asia Pacific, which called for reconciliation and unity between West Papuan leaders and a strategy for advancing freedom and independence. As a result of this, the Melanesian Spearhead Group meeting in Port Moresby in July 2014 was torn between its people's demand to support West Papua and Indonesia's demand not to support West Papua. So the Melanesian Spearhead Group demanded that West Papua prove that they were united and that their strategies accorded with the United Nations principle and methods. In response to this remarkable edict, Vanuatu and Pacific Conference of Churches hosted a week-long meeting for leaders of West Papuan political struggle organization. One objective was reconciliation and unity. The other was to develop a formula for UN member states to resolve the root cause of the problem, namely the political status of West Papua. The Saralana Declaration in Port Vila, Vanuatu, signed on 6th of December 2014, established the United Liberation Movement for West Papua as an inclusive, united representative body to carry the independence program of West Papua. This is a summary of things we've talked about. At the top left of your screen, you can see what a huge regional effort was behind the formation of the ULMWP. The next box shows how, for management purposes, we categorize our grassroots resistance. This is how we got the petition of 1.8 million signed and delivered to the United Nations in New York and Geneva. The ULMWP mission is to deliver independence, so we have to know and address the root cause of the problem, which is the Indonesian occupation of West Papua. The legal facts are: 1, West Papua under international law is an Indonesia colony, and West Papua are under illegal alien rule. Second, colonialism is illegal under international law. West Papua has a legal right to be free and a legal right to independence. This is not just a moral right or a political right. It is a legal right. The legal right to self-determination is granted by the UN Charter and customary international law. It is within the UN's political and legal mechanism that the fact of Indonesia occupation can be adjudicated and a solution developed in the form of recognition and referendum, like the case in Bougainville and New Caledonia. So the ULMWP first job was to transport West Papua from darkness to light, where their cries and arguments could be expressed and heard. And in 2015, after a huge fight in the Solomon Islands, the Melanesian Spearhead Group granted the ULMWP observer status. The MSG is an intergovernmental forum consisting of 4 UN member states. In August 2019, the Pacific Island Forum, which is 18 UN member states, including New Zealand and Australia, passed a motion calling on all parties to address the root cause of the conflict and on Indonesia to allow the UN Human Rights Commission's fact-finding mission in 2020. In December 2019, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group, which is 79 member states, passed the same motion. The ULMWP is a vehicle to deliver concrete recognition of the West Papuans' political rights and has been mandated to encourage the use of self-determination process that are in accord with UN principle and mechanism. It has also been mandated to work with the UN during the transfer of state administration and the election of a West Papuan government. After that, ULMWP authority as the executor of the Papuan people's mandate will finish. In the meantime, 3 actors are required to deliver West Papua's independence or liberation is the West Papuan people, the Indonesian people, and the international community. In July 2020, this year, almost all West Papuan institutions, including the 2 provincial parliaments, Adat or tribal council, all churches, religions, NGO, students, youth, women organizations, rejected any more autonomy and demanded the Indonesian government commence dialogue with ULMWP under the auspice of the United Nations. In most Indonesia universities, there is now active and vocal support for West Papua despite students being charged with makar or treason and jail. The ULMWP is asking international activists to petition their government to pass legislation instruction its United Nations representative to support Vanuatu's motion in the United Nations. For a motion to succeed, 127 of 193 UN member states must vote yes. Legislative instruction can help prevent delegates being bought off in the UN corridors before the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob. It is really interesting to see the development of the work of ULM at the international level. And I think one thing that led to such a level of success is the participation of people on the ground. So I think this is one of the concrete steps that our advocates for West Papua can do, is to actually support the lobby, with their own governments to support the motion of Vanuatu and the other international organizations to grant a referendum for West Papua. Although at this time, this is quite challenging because we see what they call this repressive governments, or even some governments are quite unapproachable when it comes to such issue as autonomy, self-determination, and independence, such as in the case of the Philippines. But there are other ways on how groups, communities, and individuals can support the struggle of West Papua. Before we go to the next speaker, we are very, okay. Before we go to our next speaker, thank you, Jacob, for that presentation. And now we know more about the ULMWP. So now, from international diplomacy, let's see what's happening with one of the grassroots organization that is based in West Papua itself. And in the past several months, they have been making headlines because of the massive mobilizations that they have organized in West Papua. And this includes the so-called West Papua uprising in 2019, last year. So the KNPB, or the Komite Nasional Papua Barat, or the West Papua National Committee, will be introduced to us by its international spokesperson, Victor Yeimo. Victor, are you there? Yeah, you have the mic.
Firstly, I would like to thank you for the International League for the People Struggle for this great series of webinar in this month, special for the people of West Papua. Thank you for inviting me, KNPB, to present about the movement in West Papua, special for the KNPB. Firstly, again, I would like to thank you to the International League for People's Struggle, Merdeka Network, and Indigenous Peoples for Self-Determination for giving West Papuan time to the discussion of the webinar series in this month. Before I'm continue to my presentation, I would like to just to share you about the condition before the formation of the KNPB in West Papua. So we have various organizations fighting for against Indonesian colonialism, capitalism in West Papua, since we oppose the illegal occupation in West Papua since 1969. But came to 1968 to 2001, when Indonesian opened room of democracy through the reformation. People of West Papua peacefully opened their aspiration openly to Indonesia through the formation of a Presidium Council of Papua in 1989 and 2001, where our leader ULMWP peacefully we demand through the West Papua Congress, we demand Indonesia to give our right of self-determination. So they demand our independence peacefully. So this civil movement in civil resistance movement in West Papua is started at the time openly by all the people of West Papua, not only in West Papua but in Java. There were various organizations by people of West Papua through the Papua Student Alliance, and there are some national student front. But then at the time where ULMWP killed by Indonesian Special Forces, and then Indonesian granted special autonomy in 2001. Then Indonesia also, through the Megawati Soekarno Putri, granted provincial division in West Papua. There were too many organizations, civil movement organization in West Papua established and came out in the peaceful action in West Papua and in Indonesia, coordinating, consolidating with the left organization, special pro-democracy organization in Indonesia. We see Alliance IMP in Jayapura. There were Parjal, Sonamapa, FNMPP, also the Papuan Council, Papua Traditional Council, DAP, IMPTP. Also, after Benny Wenda really, I mean, Benuenda escaped from the Indonesian prison in Abepura, he went to London Oxford and established a Free West Papua campaign. Also, we have a weapon established in Wewak. And then at the time in 2005, because there is a need for the United Front in Jayapura, because after the death of this ULMWP, and there were no one organization, one united front in Jayapura to unite all the civil resistance movement. So, especially in youth and student, there were Front Pepera. This is the united front between AMP, Parjal, Sonamapa, FNMPP, Dewanada, AMPTP, and some of them. Some of organization from engineers, also the charges. And under this united front, they were campaigning to refuse special autonomy, protest the Act of No Choice in 1969 after the launch of the Drug Lover book, where this book researched by the drug lover, the anthropologist from the Netherlands. Also, people protest to demand close Freeport in 2006 through this united front. And there were Parjal, AMPTP, AMP, FNMPP, Sonamapa too. And then this unification came to a big action in Jayapura, where they blockade road in front of the university student, and in 2006, because there were unrest in this protest, all civil resistance activists and leaders become most wanted, imprisoned in Jayapura. 43 6 Eslom in Australia. AMP, and then after that, AMP and FNMPP in Java tried to exist in Indonesia under the Front Pepera. But at that time, there are initiation by the all organization inside and outside, especially in West Papua National Coalition for Liberation, established in Vanuatu 2007. There were West Papua National Authority in Wewak 2004. But there is a need under our internal struggle movement that unification is important. But at the time, there are many repression by Indonesian colonial under the TNI and police. So not only they closed and they banned the room of democracy in West Papua, but also expansion of capital, militarization, and migrant in West Papua massively. So especially I was, at the time I led the I led the Front Pepera in Java. I have my own initiative to back to West Papua, coordinate with some of activists in Jayapura. There's Buktar Tabuni and also Sebi, Marcos Saluk. There are many organizations degraded by Indonesia. It's very difficult for us to rarely make demonstration in front of the public places. So, not only because of the need for the unity and to build up the civil resistance movement in West Papua, but also to campaign and demand the right of self-determination in International and West Papua in one voice. But also, most importantly, to organize people in resistance movement across West Papua. And also to reduce people through awareness about their history of operation, to make understand about pattern of operation in West Papua since the Indonesia occupied the land. So we call all the people from outside, all the students from outside, we call them to come back to West Papua. We need to unite and we need to build up the civil resistance movement in West Papua, start from Jayapura. So there were various organizations, IMPF, NMPP, Sonama, Front Pepera, who has been listed and most wanted by Indonesia police, and DAP, IMPTP, also Parjal, and Free West Papua campaign in Oxford, and there are too many persons. So in November 19, 2008, KNPB was formed at STT Water Post, the campus of Water Post, the theological campus in Sentani. Elected Buktar Tabuni, me as a chairman and vice chairman of KNPB. So at the time also we forming the platform of the organization. So our vision at the time we established, we formed, and we came together to agree that the KNPB vision is to liberate the people of West Papua from colonialism, capitalism, and militarism, or national liberation in West Papua. And then the mission is to mediate people of West Papua to get their right of self-determination through referendum as a peace and democratic solution. So then we also agree that the KNPB basic principles is democratic, collective, equality, progressive, militant, humanist, peacefully, and unity. That's our spirit of struggle under the KNPB's organizations. So at the Congress one in 2011, we then agree under the Congress that our program of KNPB is to build unity among political, diplomatic, and defense force. And the second one, to demand international mediated referendum in West Papua. And in the second Congress, we also we have revitalization of our program also. We want to, in 2015, we would like to consolidate people of West Papua to succeed the national civil strike. So from the establishment of KNPB until today, we have our method to achieve our goals, our mission is to education through the mass action, organizing, and consolidating in West Papua. So in all our campaign, our education, political awareness to the people, and our demand, we put our main campaign that we West Papuan, we campaign for our West Papuan legal right of self-determination under international law. And we agree with the legal argument under the international lawyer for West Papua. Melinda Janki wrote the Journal of Legal Argument that West Papua's legal right of self-determination under international law. And we campaign with this issue to enlighten Indonesia, also to make awareness inside West Papua, to know about the real history under international law. The second one is we also pressure international campaign through the Free West Papua campaign And also at the time we have good communication, we share each other, we campaign and we push a pressure for all the agenda from international and inside through the Free West Papua campaign, where Benny Wenda also established international lawyer for West Papua and international parliament for West Papua. And now with the spirit of unity, we also consolidate inside with all the West Papua, inside the organization in West Papua to push and consolidate and push the establishment of ULMWP in Vanuatu. And through the ULMWP, we agreed that our campaign is to push international supervised referendum in West Papua. And the third one is we continue to call solidarity from Indonesia, Melanesia, Pacific, and global, because we believe in Indonesia that many of our people in Indonesia also support and solidarity, where they know about the real history of West Papua, where they know about what is happening in West Papua. So we have one united front in Indonesia. It's called Indonesian People Front. We also have in Melanesia, where we push all the agenda from MSG in Melanesia through the ULMWP, Pacific, also in global. And four, we push ULMWP to become a member of MSG, bring West Papua's human rights situation to UNHCR, also stop military operation in West Papua, stop exploitation, stop racial discrimination, free political prisoner. We call people to fight for COVID-19 and its global capitalism through civil disobedience. So we call people for gardening, for their future food sovereignty in West Papua. That's one of part of the national building in West Papua. So also we also now we call people. Today we call people to mobilize and consolidate to reject the special autonomy through the West Papuan petition. So from this petition, I think today there are 33 organizations from various organizations inside West Papua come to agree that to reject the special autonomy, and we sign with one goal that we want self-determination in West Papua. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Victor, for that enlightening presentation. So I think KNPB is a relatively young organization, but it has created much impact, not only in Indonesia, but also in other parts of the world. It is interesting to know that KNPB towards its later program has embarked on an active program to organize and to conduct massive education among its members and the wider public, and to conduct various forms of resistance activities. In episode 2 of this webinar series, I remember that our guest speaker at the time, Antonio, gave a very strong challenge to the West Papua youth, to study the roots of the problems in West Papua, and to see its link to the problem of imperialism, wherein you have colonial powers, not only the Indonesian state, actually intervening and making impositions to the peoples of West Papua economically, culturally, and of course, politically. So thank you very much, Victor, for that presentation. But in all of this, we have ULMP, you have KNPB, but one thing that's also not mentioned, no, aside from the human rights situation, the very bad human rights situation in West Papua, not being talked about or not being brought out, exposed to the world. One thing that's also been kept to be a secret is that for almost 60 years, no, armed struggle has been waging in the jungles of West Papua against Indonesian state security forces. And this is being waged by the guerrilla fighters of the Free Papua Movement or the Organisasi Papua Merdeka through its own guerrilla fighters. And not many of us, even among activists in different parts of the world, would know and would understand of the existence of Organisasi Papua Merdeka or OPM. So we are fortunate enough that we have someone who will give us more clarity on this organization, its principles, and the form of struggle it opts to employ.